Hello wonderful people, it's Wild here. In today's video I'm going to show you how to build this fantasy medieval tower cottage. This show-stopping house has all of the fantasy flair with its turret and flag and its gradient style roof. Plus I'll be showing you how you can customize this build with several different color options to achieve completely different looks. The materials you'll need for this build are on your screen now. Keep in mind that to customize this build you can swap out the colors of the roofing materials, that being the wool and the concrete as well as the moss, as well as the glass colors. You can also have some fun and experiment with swapping out the wood type you use as well as the material for the walls. For example, you could swap out the white materials with the wool and the white concrete powder and birch for a mixture of sandstone. Here is the outline for today's build. You can see that we have a base which is a 7x9 rectangle and there is the door marked in there at the front. You can also see the location of 3 posts. They are spaced 3 blocks away from the rectangle and 3 blocks apart. And then off to the right hand side you can see an area marked out for where we have our tower. We're going to begin using some strip spruce logs and building up in these 3 post locations. So I'm going to build up 5 high on each post. Then I'm going to connect them up to each other and build back 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Just like that to create a frame. Next up, we're going to be working on these walls here, but before we add them in, we need to add in some temporary blocks marking in our doorways and windows. So we have a doorway marked in here at the front, and then I'm going to come over to this gap between the tower and the main part of the build, and I'm just going to build up 5 blocks high, so that should be level with these posts over here. As for our windows, on our back wall, I'm going to count 2 blocks in and leaving a 1 block gap at the bottom, I'll add in a 2 high, 1 wide window on both sides like that. On this left hand side of the build, I'm going to count in 2 blocks from the front and add in a window here. And then underneath this covered area, we're going to have another window which will be 2 blocks in and it should line up with the window at the back. Now with all these windows marked in, we're ready to start adding in the walls and we're going to be creating a texturized look like this. So you can see we've got a mixture of mossy, regular and cracked stone bricks as well as mossy and regular cobblestone. And you can change out the amount of each supply you use in here to give this build a more aged look or a newly built look. Of course, the more cracked and mossy you have your walls, the older the build is going to look. Now there's 2 techniques you can use to achieve this look. The first technique involves placing in your blocks in a randomized pattern as you go, and this works really well if you're building in survival and have limited supplies, or if you prefer texturizing as you create. You can always take a step back every now and then and check you like how the distribution is coming together. But by switching between these supplies, it can be easier to create a truly random appearance. We're building up our walls to a 4 high height, which will end up 1 block above these windows, and you'll see it sits 1 block below these posts and beams. Let's see, I think I need a little bit more cobblestone down here. And I think that looks pretty good. The second technique you can use works really well if you have ample supplies in survival or are building in creative, and that involves filling in the whole 4 high wall with just 1 supply first, like this, and then going back and breaking and replacing blocks to create the texturized look. Let's see, I think we need some more mossy down here and up here. Now we'll go in with the cracked and in with some cobblestone. And once again, it's always a good idea to take a step back every now and then and switch out blocks to achieve the look you want. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of these walls up to that 4 block height, and we're just working on the rectangle here, so leave these walls where we have our tower out. Alright, I've got all my walls filled in and randomized. Next, I'm going to take some more strip spruce logs and I'm going to place one in each corner of this rectangle. I'll remove any temporary blocks that we've got placed in here. And then I'm going to be adding an extra log at the halfway point of each wall. Then I'll connect these up around the edges. Next, on the inside of this build, I'm going to create a checkerboard pattern out of polished andesite and regular andesite. If you're in survival and want to save on resources, you could swap out the full blocks here for slabs placed at the top level. Making sure we're going right into the doorway here. I'm also going to build 2 blocks out this way with my floor material, just to fill in that floor in the tower. Next, I'm going to create some beams going across this way and this way between these posts. And I can hang a lantern in here. I'm also going to go ahead and hang one lantern underneath this beam here. Next, I'm going to fill in all of these gaps with some spruce slabs. This is going to leave us with a large rectangle when looking from above. Next, we're going to use some spruce materials around the edge. I'm going to start by placing a stair coming out of the top of each post like this, and then wherever we have these posts, I'm also going to add in a stair. Except I am going to leave just this one free because this is where we've got our tower. So where we've got these 3 blocks for our base, these 3 blocks up here need to stay free. There we go. Now in this section where we have the exposed beams, I'm going to add a slab on either side and a spruce trapdoor in the center. There we are, and I'm going to add a trapdoor in each corner. Then on the other sides, I'm going to add trapdoors in between all of these gaps, as well as on the corner. Making sure once again we leave these 3 blocks clear, and then I can place in my trapdoors here and here. So from above, this is how it should look. It should be a rectangle with a little section bit out. Now we're ready to start adding in the second story, and we're going to begin by placing in some oak log posts. I'm going to place one in the back corner here like this, and I'm just marking them in 1 high at the moment. I'm going to add one on the other corner. Then I'll count 3 blocks in, and add 1 more, and this is counting from the right side, and then I'll count 2 blocks and add 1 more, so we should have a 2 block gap, a 2 block gap, and a 3 block gap across the back. Next, we're going to come along the sides, and we're going to have 2 3 block gaps, just like this. I'll then count 3 blocks along and add in a strip spruce log. Then I'll come along the front and count 2 blocks and add in 1 more. And then I'll count another 2 blocks, and this is where I'm going to place in an oak log. I'll count 3 blocks across and add in 1 more oak log like that. Coming back from here, I'm going to count 3 blocks back from this oak log and place in a post. And then I'll count 2 blocks along and add in 1 more oak post. So you can see we kind of come around like that. And we've got the 2 spruce posts here for our railing. Now we need to work along this side. For this, we're going to count 3 blocks along from the front and add in a post. Then we're going to add in a temporary block on either side of this tower gap and add in 2 posts here and here. We can remove those temporary blocks. So there should be a 3 block gap and a 1 block gap. Now we're going to take some more of these oak logs and add 4 blocks on top of each of the posts for a total of 5 high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here's how it should look. Next, I'm going to take some more of these oak logs and connect up around the edges. I'm going to connect between each of these posts except for the ones that are going over the gap where we have our ladder. So I'm going to leave this gap here free. And just to check, that gap should line up with the tower here. Next up, I'm going to add some beams on the inside of this build. Let's add some going across this way, joining up here, and then the last one coming along this way like this and like this. So if we look from above, here's how it should look. Now we're ready to add in the walls. Before we do that, we're just going to add in the locations for our doors and windows. So we have a door right up against this post here. Then we're going to have a window too high in the center of this panel at the front, and these two panels at the side. We're going to come around to the back wall now, and I'm going to have one window on this 3 wide panel. We'll leave these two free. And then 2 windows on this side wall here. There we go. Now for this wall, we're going to create a texturized look like we had down here, but for this we're going to be using a mixture of birch wood, and that's the kind that has the texture on all sides, so that way it doesn't matter which direction we place that in. And I'm also going to be using some white concrete powder and some white wool. To achieve a random look, I'm going to make sure each panel is a little bit different. There we go. When I'm doing this, I'm going to be filling in all of the walls around this exterior, except for this gap here above where we have our ladder going. Next, we're going to remove all of these temporary blocks. You might have some of your concrete powder fall down here, but that's okay. We'll move it back up when we add in our windows later. Alright, there we go. I'm going to come inside the build and hang some lanterns. There we are. And I'm going to fill in each of these panels with my spruce slabs. We're ready now to add in some posts for this next story. I'm going to start by building up 4 high in the corners around here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to add one here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And over here 3 blocks along. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to add one on either side of this ladder area. And then over here on top of this other post. And then I'm going to come along the side of this rectangle with 2 more. Just like that. Then along this section, I'm going to build up 1 high on either side and 8 high in the center of this gable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. On these 2 panels here where we're walking into this second room, I'm going to add in a few logs. We'll have 3 come along this way, and this is where I'm going to have my door, so I'll have 1 from either side with a gap in the center, just like that. I'm also going to go ahead and add in a couple of oak logs across this way and this way. And then in the center, I'm going to build up 7 high for our gable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we'll have framing that looks like this. We have a few more of these oak logs to add in. On this post here, which is opposite this tall gable post, I'm going to build it up to that same height. And then 3 blocks down, 1, 2, 3, and on that 4th block, I'm going to add a beam going across here. Then in this section of the build, I'm going to connect up these posts across this way. So we should have 3 wide gaps, and then I'm going to connect up along the center. There we are. Let's add in some spaces for windows next. I'm going to add a 1 high window on this wall here, and then 2 1 high windows on this side, just like this. Then I'm going to come around to this large gable on this side, and I'm going to add a 2-high window on either side of this post. Next, I'm going to place in 2 temporary blocks for our doorway here, and then I'm going to fill in this taller rectangular section with my mixture of white materials up to this 4-block height. Once again, adding in texture as I go. Just like this, and I'm going to continue around on this front gable doing the exact same thing. You can see I'm really thinking about where I place in these textures just to get a really random look, and that way we have a little piece of each kind of design in every part of the wall. Alright, I'm finished filling in those walls. You can see I've gone all the way around this rectangle, leaving out that gap for the ladder. Next, we need to add in a couple more blocks to complete this gable shape. So I'm going to add 2 blocks on either side of each post. Continuing on that texture as I go up. There we are. Now I'm going to come up to this post here where we're joining on to the next room, and I'm going to add in 2 blocks on either side of that. And then we need to come over to this gable and fill in these walls. So we're going to be going up in groups of 2. We've got a group of 2 here. Let's add in the rest of that layer. Then we've got another group of 2. Let's add, I think, a wool here. And then we have one more group of 2 beside the post. There we are. Let's mirror this on that side. There we go. Next, I need to fill in these gaps on either side, just 1 block high. And I can go ahead and remove any temporary blocks for this layer as well. So if we take a step back at our build now, we're really getting a good look at the shape. Next up, let's hang some lanterns in this top story. I'm going to place one here, and then I'm going to have one, I think, in the joins over this way. And then I need to fill in this floor with some more spruce slabs. Now that we've got all of these walls in, I'm going to switch into adding glass. Now, depending on the color palette you're going with, you can swap out the glass colors you use here, but I'm using a mixture of pink, yellow, lime green, and the regular dark green for my glass, and I'm just kind of placing these in randomly to get a stained glass appearance. Where you've got any of your concrete powder that's fallen down, you can just break that, add in your glass. I think I want to have a pink one and a lime green one on the front, and then place that in at the top. I like to keep an eye out for which colors I've used where, so that way I really get a good mixture. So since I've placed them in this order on this level, I'd like to have a pink over on this side. So let's put a pink in here and a lime green, and I'll pop those in that way. I'm going to swap them around in this story. That way I've got the pink kind of far away from each other to get a nice distribution. Let's move that yellow there, just like that. Now let's see, up on here, I'm going to have a yellow and a green. So I've gone with the opposite for what I have down on the lower story. Coming around this side, we don't have many windows here, so I'm going to use my brightest colors on this wall. And don't forget to do your top and lower story windows as well, following that same principle. You can keep in mind that for this upper story, we have a pink roof really nearby, so you don't have to distribute your pink quite as much. I think I will have a pink window on this side though. Let's come down and do the base windows. There we are, all of our windows are in. The next step is to add in this tower. Now we're going with a texturized look like we have throughout the rest of the build, and it'll look something like this. So you can see we've used a mixture of this cobbled deep slate, regular deep slate, some deep slate bricks and cracked deep slate bricks. And if you don't have access to any of these in survival, you can just leave that out of the texture. Now I find the easiest way to texturize with these materials is to put in the whole tower first out of one supply, because our deep slate can be placed in several directions to achieve a different look, and by having a base already, we're able to switch out that direction as we add in our texture. So I'm going to be following the shape of this outline, building out two from either side of the gap and then across like this. And I'm just going to follow this shape all the way up. Now, as we get higher up the build, we're going to be needing to just place in this wall here. And I'm going to build up to the height of the walls like this. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and add in the texture. We really want a worn away look here, so we're going to add lots of these textured blocks. Making sure you consider how it looks from the sides as well. Let's go in with our cracked deep slate bricks. And next we're going to go in with our deep slate. You can see how I'm changing up the orientation as I place those in. And I think that looks pretty good. Let's work on the next part of the tower. Once again, I'm going to be creating it first out of one supply and then texturizing afterwards here. I'm going to begin by building up two high on top of what I've already got, just like this. Then I'm going to add a temporary block coming back on either side, and I'm going to mark in a window one block off the base, 2 blocks high, just like that. And I'm going to add 3 blocks on top of all of this. This will bring us to the top of that window. I'm going to add 2 more temporary blocks, or rather 3 more all the way across here. And we're ready to mark in some more windows. I'm going to have a 2 high window just here. Then I'm going to build up 2 high on the opposite side and leave that as a gap and have a 2 high window here. And then I'm going to come around to this side, which is over the top of these roofs, and I'm going to build up to the height of the top of that window and then add a 2 high window on top of that. So you can see that they are sitting kind of just on top of each other. Now I'm going to build up in this square to the height of that top window. So it should look like this. I'm going to add 3 more blocks to the top of this tower, 1, 2, 3, all the way around in this square shape. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove all the temporary blocks, add in my texture and my glass. Let's start by removing these blocks. Got that window up there. And let's add in the glass, once again using a mixture and considering what blocks we've got around here. There we are. Now on to texturizing, continuing the look we have below. To achieve a good texture, it's really about moving about the build and checking that you like the way it's coming together. And keep in mind that the corners are going to be visible from both sides, so you want to keep going back to check that. Alright, now we're on to deep slate and remembering to place that in the different directions for a really texturized look. This is looking pretty good. We're almost done with all of our texture. I just need to get this wall finished now. There we are. Check this side again, and we just need to add a little bit of texture down here. And I think that looks really good. So here's how our tower should be looking so far. Now we're ready to add in our roof, and just like our window colors, you can customize the design you go with here by switching out the colors of your concrete and your wool. So we're going for a look like this where it fades from a lighter color up into a darker color and then in the moss. So I'm using pink here, but you could use whatever blocks you like. Let's start on this taller roof here first. Beginning with pink concrete, or whatever concrete you're going with, I'm going to place a row along here, finishing at this edge, and I'm also going to do the other side of the tower while I'm at it. Next up, we're going to have one more row of the concrete. This time we're going to go behind that tower wall and leaving the gap there for the ladder. And then we'll have a row of the light pink. For our next layer, we're going to have one row of the pink wool. Again, going behind this tower wall. And then we're going to switch to moss for 2 high. Finally, I'm going to add a 2 high edge along the top. Once you've got your base colors in, we need to add in a little bit of texture to blend them. So I'm going to bring some of the light pink down and the dark pink up. And once again, I'll bring some of the light pink up and some of the moss down. Let's bring a little bit of moss down here. And maybe one more pink wool here. There we go. And don't forget to do it on this smaller section over here. And I think that looks pretty good. Next, we're going to come around to this side. I'm going to work on this larger shaped gable first. Once again, I'm going to start off with a layer of the pink concrete, just coming to the edge like this. We're going to have one more layer of pink concrete just like that, and one more on top of that. And let's come and do the other side as well. Here we're just going to come to this edge, stopping like this. There we go. Next, we're going to have a layer of the lighter color, so the pink wool. And on top of here, we're going to have 2 rows of pink wool. Then we're going to have 2 layers of moss blocks. You can see I'm stopping right at the edge here. And finally, we're going to have a 2-high section of moss blocks along the top. Now, before I create the gradient here, I'm going to connect it up to this gable. So let's start by adding in a layer of the pink concrete blocks along here and one more along here. And don't forget to do the other side while you're at it. So we've just got to add 1 block and then there we go. Let's add a layer of pink wool and a layer of pink wool. And for this gable, we need to add 1 more layer of pink wool going along. I'm going to stop when I reach this post just here. And over this side, the same. Now to connect it up, we need to bring the moss blocks over and I'm going to continue those around. And we need to add 1 more layer of these moss blocks along the top here. And I'll go right over the top here. Now to connect up this very top of this roof, we're just going to add 3 more moss blocks. So we've got our base shape in and we needed to create that gradient. I think that looks pretty good. Now over here. The thing about a natural design like this is every roof is going to look a little bit different, and that's what makes them so special. You could do a whole town out of houses just like this, swapping out the colors, and each one is going to look a little bit different because of the way you add in texture. And let's add 1 more moss block here. I think that looks pretty good. Round over to the other side to add in that same gradient. Now that we've got the base shape for our roof in, we need to add in some details around the edges. I'm going to start by building out 2 blocks from the peak of each gable with some more of my oak logs. Then I'm going to switch to some dark oak materials for this edging. Along this smaller gable, we'll start with a stair like this, upside down, then we'll add in a block with a stair and follow along this shape. And I'll come up this side as well. When we reach the top, I'm going to add in 2 blocks, then I'm going to add in a stair this way, a stair the other way, like this. And then I'm going to use a temporary block to place in 1 more upside down stair. Let's do this on the other side as well. There we are. Now along the top edge, I'm going to start by placing in a dark oak trapdoor and then a slab and alternate between these 2 until I reach the other side. You should finish again on a dark oak trapdoor. I'm also going to be using this same alternating pattern along the edges, starting with a trapdoor and then a slab. And I'm even going in front of this tower here. I'm also going to add in this same design on this side. And on this small section over here, we'll add in a trapdoor and a slab. Next, we need to create a same design on this edge. I'm going to place in my stairs first and zigzag my way up to the top, adding in blocks where I need to. And up the other side as well. Once again, when we get to the top, I'll add in 2 planks and then I'll add in my 3 stairs to create a little loop. There we go. Like on the top of this roof, we're going to alternate between the dark oak trapdoors and slabs. And we'll also use these slabs and trapdoors along the edge of this roof, starting with the trapdoor. Now when I'm doing this, I'm going to finish one before the edge, so I won't place in this last trapdoor because we need space for that window decoration. I will leave this edge clear as well because we will have decorations in this area. Next up, let's grab some oak logs. I'm going to have them come out from the 2 joins here and here, as well as all the joins around this edge. Don't forget to add in these 2 here and here, and I'm also going to add them on this side and this side. There we are, we've gone all the way around the build. Next, I'll switch over to some spruce slabs and we're going to connect up all of these little beams poking out, leaving out the corners. And I'm also going to go ahead and place spruce fences above and below these little logs here. Along the front and back of these gables, I'm going to place in 3 more slabs. And I'll add a stair at the top and then fences going up to the top. There we go, and then on this larger gable I'll add a stair at the bottom and at the top, and then fences connecting them. Next, I'm going to place stairs below each of these beams on the posts. And I'm going to add a spruce trapdoor below that. I'm going to leave this one clear here because we need to add an archway over our door. I'm also going to be adding these at the base of these posts, but I will be leaving this side and this side clear, as well as this section, so that way we can add decorations later. There we are. For this railing here, we're going to be using some grindstones. I want to place them so this dark oak section is facing outwards. I'm then going to place spruce slabs on top of these 2 posts and some dark oak trapdoors on top of the railing. Just like that. I'm going to place in some spruce sign next. Let's place them here, and we just want to leave these blank. Now coming down to these posts, we're going to add some designs. I'm going to place spruce stairs facing outwards. And then on the other faces, I'll place in some spruce trapdoors. Underneath these archways, we want to create a design, so I'm going to place a stair on either side and then a trapdoor. Underneath, I'm also going to place in 2 stairs, here and here. Next up, I'm going to place some trapdoors in on the posts in between the stairs. And then I'm going to take some more of these blank spruce signs and just go around this level of the post. There we are, looking better already. I'm going to come around to the walls of this stone brick layer next, and I'm going to place in some spruce trapdoors just on the outside edges. And then underneath where we have these stairs here, I'm going to be placing in a grindstone. So you can see that we've got a grindstone underneath each of those stairs. Now on the outside edges, we're going to be placing an andesite wall on top of those grindstones. I'm also going to be placing these walls onto the 3 long side here. And then when I come around to the front, I'll place one on this grindstone as well. Let's take a step back and have a look at the build now. It's really coming together. Let's move on to adding some decorations to our windows and doors. I'm going to start by adding a spruce door to each doorway with 2 dark oak fences on either side, and then we're going to create a dark oak archway with a stair on either side and a slab in the center. There we go. Now for some window decorations. On all of our lower story windows, we'll have a decoration with a dark oak slab above and below, then 2 fences, and then some dark oak trapdoors on either side. I find it easiest to go around with all of one sort of material first. I'm also going to be using this same design on the windows on this tower, so let's go ahead and add those in while we're at it. And we've got our fences. And our trapdoors. We're going to be using this same sort of design on these 1 wide windows. So we'll add in our slabs with a fence and then 2 trapdoors. Just like this. So we need to do that to these 2 as well. And while I'm up high here, let's come around and do the windows on this large gable. For this, we're going to add a slab above and below. And then we're going to have these 2 trapdoors sitting on top of the slab. And then trapdoors on either side of that. So it'll look like this once you're finished. For the rest of the windows on this story here, we're going to start by placing 3 dark oak slabs across the base and a slab above the window in the center. We'll create an archway next with some stairs. And then we're going to place in 2 grindstones and 2 fences for a look like this. So let's repeat this all the way around the build. All of our windows are decorated now, so let's move on to some more details. Underneath each of these gables, I'm going to place in a grindstone, hang down a few chains, it's up to you how far you hang them down, and then place in a lantern. I'm hanging mine down about 2 chain lengths. There we go. Next, we're going to move on to decorating this tower, so let's come down to the base first and place in a chiseled deep slate on each corner. Then we'll place in 2 polished deep slate stairs, one upside down and one right way up. And then we'll place in 2 walls going up in the polished deep slate as well. There we go. Coming up to the top of the build, I'm going to place a polished deep slate in the center of each of these walls. And then a polished deep slate stair to the sides of that. I'll also be placing polished deep slate walls underneath each of these blocks. Next, we want to create some planters along this tower. I'm going to start by moving this slab down 1, and then I'll place a slab to either side of that. This is where we're going to place our first planter. I'll place in a dark oak trapdoor with a moss block, and then a dark oak sign in front of that, and we just want to leave that blank. Then I'm going to add a dark oak stair to either side, and all of our planters are going to have this same design. Let's place one here level with these slabs and here level with this window decoration. There we go. Coming up, we're going to have some up here. Oops, and I forgot to add in my trapdoors onto this window, so let me add those in. So our first planter is going to go level with the base of this window. So we're going to place it on top of here. I'm then just going to add in my stair and another sign, but we don't need to add anything underneath it. Then we're going to be having a planter above this window. So let's start by placing in a trapdoor with our moss block. Then we'll have our sign and then 2 stairs. There we are. And we're going to have one more coming up towards this side. I want to allow enough height to be able to place in a 2-block high flower. So I'm going to be placing that in here. Then we'll have our trapdoor, sign, and our stairs. Coming up to the top, we're going to create a turret style roof. We'll begin by placing in a little upside down T worth of our darkest shade like this. Then I'm going to place in a couple of temporary blocks, and then using our next shade, we're going to create a little upside down U over the top of each of the points. And then I'll remove any temporary blocks. I'm going to add one more block on top of the center of each of these sides in that shade, and then I'm going to switch to my moss blocks. I'm going to add one on top of here, and then I'm going to build up 3 high at the top. So we've got our base colors marked in the shape, and we just need to add a little bit of variation by bringing some of the colors down. Let's add maybe one coming up this way here. Some pink coming down. Just create that texturized look like we've got going on in the rest of the build. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. There we go. And I think I'll leave it at that. Now I need to create some dark oak edging like we have on the rest of our roofs. I'm going to start by placing a stair in the center of each side. And then to either side of that, I'm going to place in 2 dark oak trapdoors. And then in the corner, we'll add in a slab. Next, we're going to take some fences and go up the sides of the tower. At the very top, we're going to be adding a flag. So this flag can fly in whichever direction you like, but you want to make sure that it's flying in the same direction as any other flags in your world. So there's my turret, and I think I'm going to have my flag flying that way. To create this, I'm going to start with some white wool, and we're just going to make a natural curving shape. I think that's good. Then I'm going to go on top with some pink wool, and I'm only going to go some of the way. I'll leave a little tail of white for that tapered flag look. Before we add in the finishing touches, we need to add some chimneys to our roof. I'm going to add my first one on this gable here. I'm going to come to this first layer, come one back and add in 2 stairs like this. Then I'll build up 2 high with my deep slate brick blocks. We'll add in a couple more stairs, 1 more block, and our campfire will go on top of this. I'm going to surround it with some dark oak trapdoors. So there's our first chimney. For our second chimney, we're going to come around to the back of the build. I'm going to count up to this second 2 high layer, and I'm going to count 2 blocks in. On that third block, I'll place in a stair and a stair on the top. Then we'll place in 2 deep slate bricks going up. Then we'll have a stair going off to the side. We'll have an upside down stair and a right way up stair, and an upside down stair again, so we've come around in a corner shape. Finishing off with 2 of our blocks, a campfire, and some more trapdoors. And here's how this chimney should look. Our build is looking really beautiful now, but let's add the last few touches to really bring it to life. So here we can see the build with all of its finished details, and it really does look beautiful. So not only have I done lots of landscaping around this build, but I've also added some finishing touches to the cottage itself. The most obvious thing you'll see is that I've draped lots of greenery off the roof and off of some of the points on the build. I've focused them around the edges of the roof so they can hang off like that, and around the towers and around the chimneys. Since I've gone with this pink hue, I've stuck to these flowering azalea leaves, which have these pretty little flowers. But if you use a different color palette, you could swap out these leaves to match. Another thing that I've done for this lush feel is placed lots of greenery onto the mossy section of the roof. And to keep this looking really green, I've used just these ferns in small and large and these small drip leaves. You could absolutely have some fun and use some coloured flowers up here if you'd like. And speaking of flowers, I've also added lots of flowers to all of my planters on the tower, as well as to some pots on all of my window ledges. I've also gone ahead and added lots of little flower beds around my build using these same pink flowers. And by grounding them with a little bit of the coarse dirt here, it makes it stand out from the rest of the garden. Continuing on with the lush feel from the build, I've placed lots of grass in little clumps, as well as a few extra flowers here and there. But I have stuck to just these pink tulips and then some of these lily of the valley, where I'm not planting inside my flower beds. That way it makes the flower beds feel a bit more special. Some other details you can see in my garden is that I've got a nice pathway leading up to my build, and I've used these warm hues which almost have a pink shade to them, which works well with my build, and they lead over to a road where I've connected it up to some other fantasy medieval builds, although this would look great as a standalone house as well. Another thing I like to do when decorating outside is to create some destinations as well as some focal points. So at the start of the build, I've got this little carriage here, as well as some hay to tie in with the warm colours in the oak wood. If we follow off on this path here, we come to a little swing set, as well as some hay, and I've used this wheat growing in the fields to frame the back of the build. I've even built a little scarecrow matching the colours of my build. And then on this side of the build, connecting up via another pathway, I've placed in a little seating area, making sure that all of my decor uses materials found in the build, so I've used lots of dark oak as well as stone materials here. Now let's have a look at how you can customize this build by switching out some colours. So of course we've got our pink colour palette here. The next variation we've got here, I've swapped out all of the pink colours for a warm orange hue. When making changes to a colour palette, you can just swap out the really distinct colours like I've done here, switching out the wool and the moss in the roof, and it completely changes the look of the build. But make sure when you make these colour palette changes that you follow it through with the rest of your landscaping. So I've used orange, red and yellow flowers. I've even changed the carpet over here on my llamas, and I've changed the banner over on my scarecrow. I've also gone ahead and swapped out the glass. Now, since I only have 3 colors that match my color scheme, I've just used those 3 rather than the 4 in my original design. And I've ensured that the flowers in front of all these windows match the color scheme as well. For this next color palette, I've switched out quite a few things to achieve a really nice cyan look. So most obviously you can see that the roof colors I've used some of this prismarine, the dark prismarine, and then the warped planks. But I've also gone ahead and swapped out the materials I've used for the walls. So instead of the stark white color, I've used a mixture of sand, smooth sandstone, and sandstone. And I think this is a nice hint to the fact that these materials here come from the ocean by the seashore. Just like with all my other transformations so far, I've made sure to incorporate the same colors into my garden. And here the wheat and the hay bales I've got surrounding do a really nice job of tying together the warm hues from the sandstone with the greenness of the landscape. For this color option, I've stuck to a really neutral color palette here, keeping those sandstone toned walls. This color option has a much more classically medieval feel, using some bricks, granite, and packed mud for the roof, but it still has that fantasy flair with this turret here. Keeping with the lush vibe, I've used white and green flowers throughout, and I switched out the colored glass for some simple white glass, which ties in with the more rustic theme here. You can see that just by changing out the color of the roof and the glass and occasionally some of the more structural elements like the walls, you can really transform a build and get a number of different looks to suit your purpose. So now we can see all of these variations all together. I've only gone ahead and swapped out my roofing and wall supplies for these builds to achieve these completely different looks, but I'd love to see what designs you could come up with by perhaps switching out the color of this edging here, or you could switch out which logs you use in the build. Or you could even play around and perhaps instead of having a stony base, you could have a brick base, and that would work really well with a color palette like this one, or like the natural color palette with the mud brick. So now you've got a beautifully customized fantasy medieval cottage. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you consider liking and subscribing, and check out my Patreon to support me further. I'll see you in another video.